I'm Jimmy Lewis, and this is Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, the dirt bike podcast where we talk about motorcycle and motorcycle-related products. In episode number 33 of Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, I'm lucky enough to get Chris Reel in, and he's a real live petroleum engineer. So, you know that oil question? We get it answered. So all of your semi-religious, often confusing oil and lubrication problems are turned into questions and answered on this show. This show is brought to you by Climb. Has been with this show since the beginning, and I really appreciate that. What I like even better is that the gear is super awesome. I've been wearing it since the beginning. It's evolved a bunch. It's very durable, really good fitting. They have features on their gear that are pretty much industry leading. And I appreciate that because that's what I wear when I get to do fun stuff, and I'm comfortable and I like almost everything that they make. So if you are looking for a change of gear or you're looking for the best gear, I think you won't be disappointed by trying Climb. So give them a look. Along with Taco Moto. So you've heard us talk about Taco Mike on the show. He's been a guest host a few times. Taco Moto Co., that's how you find him on the web, sells a lot of the kind of cool and unique tuning products that you need to get your emissions compliant bike running up to snuff. So if you have questions, he has answers, and he can also sell you the stuff. So if we can't answer the question here, which we hope we can, maybe he can answer the question over there, and he can also sell you the parts that you might need to get your especially KTM or Husky dual sport bike running like a champ. Anyways, it's tacomoto.co and DDC Racing. That's Delaney Drive Components. They're makers of very strong, durable, chromoly, chrome-plated sprockets. If you've seen these things, they look like Swiss cheese. They're super light for a steel sprocket. They last forever. They come with a 1-year warranty, and they are built by riders who really care about keeping riding areas open. So if you're interested in some good drive systems parts, check out ddcracing.net. That's Delaney Drive Components. Now, here's the show. So, it is 7 o'clock. 7:01, actually. We are in Pahrump, Nevada, Valley of the Dirt People, which I say affectionately all the time. I'm with Chris Reel, or Chris Reel, or Chris, how can you say the name also?
Reel.
Reel? Yeah. So I wasn't too bad.
Not bad.
Somebody told me Reel.
It's real.
It's Chris Reel. Chris is Reel here tonight, and we are on Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. This is edition number 33, which will more than likely drift into the next edition because we have so much stuff to cover, and I only have Chris for a little while. So we're going to try to knock it all out. We're going to try to segment it into, I don't know whether I think we should talk about oils first. Or, yeah, because everybody wants to know about oil. So do I. We'll do the first half of this segment on, we'll have the oil questions come in. So that's your cue on the message boards if you want to have your oil question answered. And I know how this works is we're going to start talking about stuff, and it's going to prime some other questions. So you can, if you have questions, we'll kind of take a second good look at it. I have some questions here on the board, which I don't know clipboard, I don't know if we'll get to. And hopefully we'll all start doing some learning. But Chris has a disclaimer.
Okay. I do have a disclaimer. I'm Chris Reel with DPS Technical. I'm a motorcycle guy. My job involves a lot of proprietary stuff. So tonight, this is not professional technical consulting. It's educational entertainment. If I make a mistake, it's all Jimmy's fault because he's invited me here and he's given me some really good tequila. But let's just have some fun and hopefully it can be informational, educational, but not legal. That's my disclaimer.
Well, you already did better than most of my co-hosts. Well, I'll probably be cutting you off, and people will tell me, "Shut up, Jimmy," and let them talk. But I managed to just turn around, get a full pour in, for me, and I didn't have to worry about talking back into the microphone or jumping in. So that's good. We're off to definitely a good start. We got a few people in the room checking stuff out. So one of the questions I always get, and you've known me for quite a long time, it's like, "Hey, Jimmy, what oil do you run?" And you say, it's funny to watch because I kind of stutter sometimes, and I hiccup, and basically I never give an exact, real straight answer because the kind of oil I run is not necessarily a straight answer. I run kind of whatever I can have my hands on at the moment. It could have been what was given to me for free, which is often the case. We're testing bikes all the time, and sometimes people give us oil to use. It could be the cheapest stuff I got down at Walmart. It might have been what I had left over from some other project I was doing, and it might be a mix of all of those. And so how bad is what I'm doing truly for my motorcycle?
Jimmy, as long as you have oil in your motorcycle, you're ahead of most. I went through your cupboard just a few minutes ago while you're sorting out your stuff, and you've got a nice selection of miscellaneous oils and chemicals, and none of them are bad. And so as long as you put something in that sort of matches what your needs are, you're ahead of the game. So and I saw some petroleum oils in there. I saw some synthetic oils in there. I saw some mystery stuff in odd bottles.
Some of the mystery stuff came from you.
Yes, and I'm gonna enlighten you a little bit on that. I see something that I know that I gave you personally a long time ago.
There used to be a Post-it note that said, "Do not get this on your hands."
Well, that was before we got official disclaimers.
Yeah, disclaimers. Yeah, no, that's the super lube.
Yep.
That was that super lube stuff. So yeah. I know Chris from way back in the day when I started, when I became a KTM factory rider. Part of our deal was we were, I was going to bring this up, Duralube, right? You were in charge of Duralube, correct?
Yes, I was one of the principals and one of the founders of Duralube and one of the original test riders, and bought into the company using student loans, and went through the entire history of the company until we found somebody that had a big enough check, and we sold it. So I was there from day one till the last day under that label.
Because my perception, like right from the early days about that, was I always thought it was a big company. Because if you were going to sponsor a factory team at the time, because you had myself, Danny Hamill, and Dan Smith.
Correct. We were the factory recommended oil from our friends at KTM Motorcycles when it was KTM's on the West Coast and Pitton's on the East Coast.
That was definitely even a little bit before my time. So, it was funny because at the time I came from running a brand called CalGuard, and I know Danny was always Maxima. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what Dan Smith seemed like he had kind of bounced around a little bit too. Oh God, what was that? There was another brand that's probably no longer that visible in the motorcycle market at the time. But we had and here's the funny thing is that was the time when we were pushing especially on the smaller displacement bikes, we were pushing those things as far as I was racing a 125. And Danny was racing the 250, and he rode the 250 like I rode a 125, which was pinned all the time. And we had after a little while, we had a pile of cylinders because we kept sticking the pistons. We were seizing them, and it was. I remember I was always just frustrated because I wanted to run the oil, but I just didn't have any success with it. We tried a whole bunch of different stuff, and this is probably one of the few times that I would actually say I had a consistent failure using a product. It was like, okay, this product wasn't up to what we were pushing it to.
and I'll agree with that. You were kind of in the middle of a pretty significant global technology shift. We were just evolving away from leaded gas to unleaded fuel.
Yep.
We were evolving from air-cooled designs to early water-cooled designs, and we also taking a look at how the riders were evolving in the speeds. There was a period of time there where a good rider, like Jimmy or Bobby Ballantyne or any of the other guys, could ride beyond the capabilities of the machine. So everything was on the ragged edge, and so we.
Oh, I kind of, I knew we were pushed. Like I said, we were pushing the 125, and the only guy that really wasn't having any problems with it was Dan. I remember Dan was not seizing his bike, and we were all running F&L fuel, so we had a consistency in the fuel, and our fuel was leaded. Because at the time, that's it was pretty inconsistent what you were getting at the gas station. So we were trying to keep everything consistent. And I remember we were tried jetting. We would have to, in order to get the bike to survive, we'd actually have to jet it to where it wasn't fast anymore. It just
right.
and then so that wasn't an option. It's like, okay, I want to have the fastest bike. I had the fastest bike, but I wanted to have the fastest bike by another level. And we, like I said, we ended up in a season. KTM was also having a problem, especially when I moved up to 250s with power valves at the time.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of an issue. There was a lot of heat being stored up right behind the back of that power valve, and then the power valves would snap. And but I remember talking to you, and you're like, "Don't worry, we're gonna fix this." And KTM said, "We don't care how many cylinders it takes to get to the bottom of this." And the cylinder pile got pretty big before we kind of ended up, okay, just go back to running what you guys know works, so we don't have any failures during races. Because luckily we were able to do all this testing. We're never forced to do testing during racing.
No, that is a bad recipe. And as a team manager, we look at the results, and if we are testing on race day, it's never good.
So in the end, and here's the story. Here's the moral of this story, is that in the end, I had a lot of Duralube two-stroke oil, and in fact, I still have some. I have some up at my cabin. We have a lot of containers of it. It's the little bottles, and I ran that stuff for till now. How many years is that? 20 years at least?
No.
Well, since I was not so.
That was 1985.
It was, but I started racing in 89 is when I started riding the KTM.
Okay.
So how many years is that? Tell me to do math. I don't do math in this podcast.
Well,
so 30 years. I've been running that stuff for 30 years in my KTM 200 that lived up there for a long time, in all of my chainsaws, in any of my friends' bikes that rode up there that needed two-stroke oil, including Dave Donatoni's CR250, which often didn't even have coolant in the radiators. And that stuff performed flawlessly as long as you weren't trying to wring your bike's neck. And I mix two-stroke oil kind of the same way. I mean, I don't mix like a castor and a synthetic or a petroleum in two-stroke oil. I'm smart enough not to do that, to mix dissimilar oils. But that stuff actually was really, really good. I mean, except for 10/10ths. And there's so few people that use stuff to 10/10ths, but they think they do, or they want to, or they need to. And I think this goes back to your point about oil in the beginning. It's probably best just to start by making sure you have oil in your motor and enough of it. Yeah?
Correct. And also, from our standpoint, the Duralube days, we were one of the first lean mix oils.
It was 100 to 1, right?
50 to 1. 50 to 1 when the standard of the day was 16 to 1 Bardol VBA. And when we first came out, everybody looked at us and said, "You guys you're way lost." And we had figured out some things that were pretty leading edge early, and then about the time things were The fuels were changing. We discovered some other technology which was quite unique, and we were bringing that forward. And there were some challenges with the 0.1% people.
Yeah, that's a story I just told. Mine wasn't unique, but here's the bad thing is that like people would kind of find out that we were seizing our bikes. I mean, we basically would go be practicing the bomb run, and blowing our bikes up and then getting towed back. You'd see Jimmy and Danny getting towed back, and Danny could blow his 500 up, unlike Dan, because he rode it like a 125. And so they'd see us getting towed back to the truck, and they're like, oh, bikes are junk. And then of course KTM's like, no, the oil's junk. And then like, we're like, no, it's just, we're testing stuff and we're trying to make them faster. And you're trying to answer the questions. But in reality, it wasn't there were probably 15 to 20 other guys that I knew of on that same line running the exact same bomb on all different kinds of bikes running Duralube, and they weren't having the problems that we were. So,
yeah. And you got to remember when, the speeds really changed in that era. Suspension, brakes, motors, everything was evolving rapidly. And we had a bunch of custom fit pistons. The scuff marks match the scuff mark. The pistons match the scuff marks on the cylinder. But some of the vehicles were literally breaking in half. Wheels were coming unwelded. So
it's not like today.
It's not like today. I mean, the good old days. Some of those days weren't all that good. Yeah. And I remember in the early days of, when I was racing 125, I could keep up with 500s and 250s going across the valley. Sure.
And I remember I came back, and raced a couple races on 125, maybe 8-10 years later, and no way, not even close. And what changed? The bikes weren't any faster. The suspension got better. So all of a sudden everything's, getting ridden harder. The engines are taxed more, things of that nature. So, interesting, good times. But that was how I met you. You probably thought I was a pompous little racer prick kid.
No, as a matter of fact, I kind of remember a meeting that we had, and I know that you had challenges, and I was at most of the races, and I saw you pushing the guy in front of you with a very stiff rope. But I know that we were all doing our absolute best to push technology forward, whether it be suspension or oil technology, and we were dealing with a lot of variables. The bikes, the fuel, the riders, brakes, everything. And at the end of the day, we solved the challenges, and
I think towards the end of before KTM, and that's when KTM went bankrupt. That's why I stopped riding for them. I think at the end we were actually running the 2-stroke oil.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at the end, and I don't think actually, in all honesty, I think by then I wasn't riding the 250 that fast anyways. My bike got faster and I didn't have to use all it had.
The bikes definitely evolved, and I don't care what color the fender is. I mean, if you had, in that day the fenders were white and
white KTMs.
Yeah, white KTMs.
Right before they were white. No, they were white and teal and white and purple and red, white and blue when I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're all different colors.
But they all got better, and now there's some wonderful motorcycles out there to choose from, and some really cool things coming for the future. But I guess that's another discussion.
That's where you zip. You can't talk about it because you've probably ridden like 2022 stuff yet, maybe. Yeah, allegedly.
I can't confirm or
allegedly.
deny.
Yeah, maybe some 2022 stuff. I don't know how I know that either. But so one of the other questions I get a lot, and this is funny because it is back to 2-stroke oils, because we do get a lot of 2-stroke questions on the show. So now KTM recommends 60-1 in their when you're mixing gas. Like currently in the SX is the only one that you're mixing gas in anymore. But the last few years of the carbureted bikes, especially the Mikuni, they recommended 61, and everybody was having all these jetting issues, and us included, because I kind of refused to mix a high strung 2-stroke that I knew I was going to be pinning across the desert or on a motocross track at 60-1. Couldn't do it because I'm always been a 40-1 guy, or however much that is, just
three glugs and a capful.
Yeah, for every gallon. Yeah, something like that. So, but they said just do it, and so for sure at that point I went and got MotorX, because now I'm playing their game and I'm going to use what they recommended. So I got my hands on MotorX and I ran it at 61, and all of a sudden the jetting got cleaned up. All of a sudden the bike ran better with the stock jetting, and everything was right. And nothing went wrong. I didn't seize it, didn't break it. So then I switched over to whatever oil I was custom with, whether it was, what the oil of the week, whether it was Maxima or whether it was Redline, or, I have some old CalGuard, and if I had some Duralube out here, I would have poured it in it too, and kept running it at 60-1. Never had a problem. And now we hear about what these oil injected bikes are doing. And the same thing with Beta. Beta's, they had the Caheen on it, so it was a little less finicky, but they were also recommending go, a lot leaner with the oil to gas ratio.
Right. And one of the things that gets overlooked is what the actual oil ratio really is. So if it's all concentrate, there's no mixing agents in there, any solvent, and it's not pre-diluted in the bottle, then the actual volume of oil that you're putting into that gallon of gas and shaking can be significantly less. But if you have an oil that requires a mixing solvent to be put in with it, well, then of course the solvent doesn't burn real well and it doesn't lubricate very well, so you have to use more to get the actual oil to fuel ratio correct. So that's one of the things that people, back in the day, it was standard procedure to have a high viscosity oil in the bottle cut with 15 or 20% solvent, and then of course you have to use more oil. And so if you're more than a C student chemistry wise, you could figure out how to formulate an oil that would actually mix with gas, and the gas is obviously a petroleum, and so if you have a petroleum that kind of dilutes fairly easy in the gas, you're in pretty good shape. But today there's a lot of B+ students and a handful of A students
that are making oils.
So everybody's had to up their game, and that's the wonderful thing about the motorcycle and the racing industry. If you're a C student, you get smoked.
Yeah, quickly. And so kind of, on that, so that we're just, sometimes the oils, everything's getting a little bit better. And even though sometimes maybe the gas, and I want to talk about the gas, maybe we'll hit, I want to get onto another thing before we go on to gas, because you're kind of an expert on that as well. Have a lot of experience. Well,
if you're the oil guy and you're 50-1, that means you have 2% of the equation. That means you better know what the other 98% of the equation is, because
right.
You're going to get all the blame.
Right. We're going to get onto the gas here in a little bit. So the other big kind of question that we get a lot about here is people say, what's the best 4-stroke oil to put in there? And you go, across the board, and it's just like 2-stroke oil. Everybody has their favorite brand. and the one thing that keeps coming up, and I'll use the brand name because it's the one that seems to be the most popular, is Rotella.
Yep.
The Rotella gets kind of popped up. The diesel oil, the 1540, I think is what it typically is. Yes. that people go to. And for a while, there was a few of the aftermarket clutch manufacturers that were recommending it. They were the first ones that really publicly kind of came out. But in reality, that oil is not technically designed for what we are doing.
True.
Now, I actually took the time to go in and look at the bottles and look at the standards, that the letters, the API and the SNs.
So you dissected the alphabet soup?
I don't know what, I mean, I don't know what, but I know there's the JMSO?
JASO,
Yeah.
the Japanese Automotive Standard Organization.
And then there's MO and MA, right?
MA and MB.
MA and MB. And so those are that's a motorcycle specific standard that was developed for motorcycles in Japan, or it was a testing procedure developed with a motorcycle bias, correct?
True.
Okay, you step in anytime I start making stuff up or getting things.
No, you're
incorrect. But
you're pretty close, and if I can just kind of wade in so you don't get too lost.
Cut it, yeah.
Okay, the API, the American Petroleum Institute, all of the institutes kind of rely upon testing organizations or standards organizations, whether it be SAE or ASTM, Society of Automotive Engineers, or American Society for Testing Materials, and so we all participate in these groups. And the Japanese, since they have a lot of motorcycles, and they were having to deal with automotive oils, they say, well, time out. Let's take a look at what our challenge is, and develop a standard that addresses the common gear case, crankcase, and clutch.
And before you go crazy, so the biggest difference between most automotive engines and a motorcycle engine is the fact that we have a wet clutch and a transmission mixing with the same oil that's lubricating our piston and our crank and our cam chains and valves, everything.
And we don't have any oil pressure.
Oh, really? Compared to
a car?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. A car at idle. My Toyota. Can I say Toyota?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. My Toyota has about 60 pounds of oil pressure at idle.
Right.
My motorcycle will never see 60 pounds of oil pressure throughout the system.
I did not know that.
So we have a mixture of pressure, and we have a mixture of fling, and a mixture of dip and hope.
Dip and hope.
No, that's what
Can I get a modified dip and hope for my bike?
Well, Briggs and Stratton always had a dip and hope where you dipped in the oil and flung it around.
I have a crank of one of those laying. It was actually a Honda generator motor that didn't dip and hope good enough.
And so the motorcycle motors are so compact, and they get run pretty hard, but they don't get run that many miles, not really. And so the lubrication system works pretty good. It's a pretty lightweight system. The oil pumps are
they're tiny.
They're tiny. Sometimes they're even a reed valve.
I remember. So I remember the old Huskies. Yeah, the old Huskies that used a reed valve as the oil pump.
Yes, and I do too. And when that would get a little piece of stuff in there and hold the reed open, then you got nothing. But
that's dip and hope.
That's dip and hope. So motorcycle oils are formulated for specific applications, and the MAMB, one is friction modified and one is not. So the friction modifier, if it's a real slippery oil, kind of makes the clutch go a little bit crazy, or allegedly, or it may not be good for the clutch. And some non-friction modified oils are a little bit grabbier, and the clutch is a little bit happier. And since the transmission is stirring the oil, the formulation becomes a little bit more critical, because the transmission, it's a gear ratio thing, but from a lube engineer standpoint, it's an air stirrer. It stirs air into the system, and your dip and hope don't like air.
so your oil gets foamy, essentially.
Correct.
And they put modifiers in there to reduce that.
Correct.
And they put modifiers in oils to make them slipperier or less slippery. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's and that changes based on emissions regulations.
A lot
sometimes.
Of that's more on the. I always compare oil to like a chocolate chip cookie recipe: egg, sugar, flour, chocolate chips, and so you start balancing things back and forth. So we've got the additive package, which is the anti-wear. That's kind of an emission thing. We've got the viscosity modifiers, which either change the viscosity a little bit or make it possible to run a lower lower viscosity base oil. So you have a lot of things in this equation, and you got to remember that motorcycles typically run pretty doggone hot. The oil gets pretty hot, and the clutch gets the oil really hot. So typically, you'll have motorcycle oils that are pretty thermally stable. They're at the higher end typically of the the price range, and they're at the higher end typically of the performance range for what we'll call a passenger car motor oil.
Okay, and so when we go back to the Rotella.
Yeah.
And I actually looked at the bottle, and the bottle actually it had the JM. What's the alphabet soup that I
JASO?
JASO. It had the JASO rating on it.
Yeah, JASO, and it will either have one of the two.
Yeah, and it was, I believe it was, I don't remember exactly which one it was. See, that it's alphabet soup, but so it's really not that bad to run that oil.
Yeah, the challenge that we have is, diesel oils, your heavy duty truck oils, very often they're kind of overbuilt in some other areas, and
for extreme pressure,
and extreme fuel dilution and additive control, and the deposits that we get from diesel. I drive a diesel, you drive a diesel.
Yep.
Are a lot different than the deposits that we get from gasoline. And the gasoline oils are formulated to protect grandma's grocery getter if she goes drives 100,000 miles in her car 2 miles at a time. And so we have to protect that. And the diesel oils are everybody, that those are formulated for the over-the-road trucking guy who, he'll
runs it 12 hours at a time.
12 hours at a time with 2 log books and cheap, cheap and sometimes very dirty fuel. So the deposit control side of that is a big consideration.
And probably not ideal for a motorcycle.
Well, not ideal. But us motorcycle guys, we change oil frequently.
Do you think way too much?
No, I'm used to being in the oil business. You should change it every 50 feet and pay retail.
I said I was working on a video about the Honda 450X, and then one of the things I said is you can look at what the manual specifies and stuff, and I think that's a very, very safe and extremely conservative oil change schedule. And it's not going to hurt it unless you're not very good at changing oil by doing it more often.
No, it's actually good, and you got to remember that motorcycles, you have some guys that never get the oil really hot, and other guys that
I'm that guy
that will take that 450X and ride it 60 miles across the desert. Hard. And so when you get the oil hot and it starts to turn to carbon, starts getting dark, or if you're a clutch monkey and you slip the
there's the best way to wreck oil.
Yeah, and so the manufacturers are saying, look, if you just follow what we're saying, all you guys will live through.
You'll never have any problem.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's for even on some of the manuals they have a quote racing schedule and a regular guy schedule just to be safe.
Yeah,
I think. Although I would feel pretty safe being just the regular guy schedule, even if I was the race guy, unless I'm one of those abusive guys that hammers the clutch or likes. And then the other thing is when you get contaminants in there, so you're in a really moist environment, and there's some open breather on it, and you're going to get moisture inside of there. That wrecks oil.
Yes, it does.
It wrecks bearings, and then which hopefully your oil sticks on. Oh, and the other thing I love is the cold startup. Yeah, people are so worried about is my oil gonna be there for me when it's a cold startup? I have a theory on this.
Well, that's what the two numbers on the oil are for. 5W30.
Let's dive into that.
Okay. Well, the first number 5W is a viscosity rating based on flow rate through universal Centi-Stokes, the amount of oil at 32 degrees that'll flow through a fixed orifice, and then
okay, so the 5, and so let's just
5W is the winter.
Yeah, so that's the cold, that's the W, and so 5 flows more than 10.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I always get confused when we started getting up to the 80s and 90s. But that's
we'll separate 2 strokes from 4 strokes.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So there's 0. So you have 0. You have 0 weight oils and 5 weight oils and 10 weight and 15. And so the higher the number, the more it's going to flow.
No,
the other way around.
The other way around.
Rather around.
The thicker it is. Less viscous.
So the number is the viscous, which means how thick it is.
Resistance to flow.
Resistance to flow. So the 15 doesn't flow nearly as good as the 0 when it's freezing.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Just want to explain that so everybody kind of has that, because I will forget the difference between the 0 and the 15 probably in 30 minutes. You can quiz me.
Well, just remember that the W next to the first number doesn't stand for weight. It stands for winter.
Winter. Yeah, I knew that.
Okay.
Yeah,
and then,
I learned that 3 or 4 years ago somehow.
And then the other number is the oil's viscosity at 212 degrees.
Which is boiling. For those of us that paid somewhat attention in that class that it teaches about that stuff.
Well, that's boiling at
kitchen. It's home economics.
It's boiling at sea level.
Home economics is where I learned how to cook spaghetti, which is what I lived on while I was going to school trying to be a motorcycle racer. Okay, so back to the number after the W. So 15W, 40, and 40 is on the scale of what's the normal range you see is like usually 30, 40s, some 50s.
Well, you see different ranges for different applications. So cars, 0W20 for startup and for fuel economy and for engines that have a lot of oil pressure. They're engineered around the lower viscosities. The motorcycles are typically engineered around the higher viscosities because we don't have we don't have good oil pressure, and so typically we'll have a 10W30 probably at the lightest, and very often we'll see 10W50s, or in the old days 20W50, or
yep.
Or if you're really old, you might have a straight weight oil, and
a nice 30 weight.
Oh yeah,
that's for the tractors these days.
Yeah, so when you start looking at what are our engines designed around, our engines are designed around our needs and what the manufacturers can build to meet our needs and for us to have good results with them.
So now I'm going to ask about like the gear oils are generally 80 weights and 90 weights.
Yeah, and they're not rated, and this is what confuses everybody. They're not rated on the same scale.
Oh, okay.
So like a 80W90 gear oil, you say, oh my gosh, that stuff is so thick you got to scoop it with a spoon. An 80W90 gear oil is about equivalent to an SAE 30 motor oil.
So in this, but this is even true in automotive applications when like the differential fluid that you're putting in, mm-hmm. it's 80 or 90 weight. Because I always wondered about that, and so I'm learning something here pretty interesting because some of that stuff does pour out like honey.
Yeah.
And by the way, I watch a really interesting YouTube video that I'm sure you can search out where a guy ran his lawnmower motor on honey for a while. And then even more amazingly, and we'll get to snake oil, he put Marvel Mystery Oil in it after it seized and got it to fire up and run again.
Sure.
Pretty good. And it was seized up. He took it apart and looked at it. It was truly amazing. But so back to the oil. I always get on these sidebars because I want people to start. I don't want them to watch us. I want them to go on the other window on their thing and start searching out like a guy runs motor on honey. And then they're going to watch, while they're listening to us, they're going to watch a Tecumseh motor just blow up after about like 30 minutes, by the way. The honey was actually a pretty good lubricant as far as he was concerned.
Have you ever tried Coca-Cola?
No, Now, I don't have that many motors laying around that are working, because if they're working, I'm going to put them to work.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the gear ratio oil viscosity. The gear ratio, the gear oil viscosity. So it's a different scale, and it's for a different purpose.
Correct. The viscosity scale is different, and the application is different, and the chemical structure is different. Motor oils, if we want to get into this a little bit, they're sulfur, phosphorus, and they've got some zinc, and they've got zinc and calcium, and the gear oils are sulfur, phosphorus, that real pungent odor that you smell when you're towing your trailer and your gears are starting to get a little hot. That's a different type of anti-wear additive package, and that's really good for that application, those loads. But it's if you mix up the bottles and you put gear oil in your motor and motor oil in your differential.
I've personally never done that, but I've known people that have done that, and I've actually taken some motors apart that people have done that. They inadvertently put gear oil inside of their motor, and it ground it up pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially the piston.
Yeah, it doesn't like that.
It doesn't like the high. It doesn't seem like it likes a really ridiculously high heat, and it doesn't like the aluminum versus.
Yeah, from a metallurgical standpoint, it's we call that challenging.
Good. So and of course they always say, oh no, this was the. I'm like, something's, and you could smell it. I mean that.
Oh yeah.
You like you just talked about the gear oil smell. You could smell it. It's like, dude, what'd you run in this thing, or what was wrong? It's like, oh, blah, 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 whatever. And again, when something goes wrong with your motorcycle, ask yourself, what was the last thing you did? It just kind of like one of those Jimmy things that he just says to people all the time. And it's like, Jimmy, you're being a dick. And it's like, no, I'm just saying something that often will help solve a lot of problems and make everybody's life easier if we just admit it. So, good. We got a couple really good questions here that I want to, Justin Bradley asks, I have a bunch of 10W40, but my new bike specs 10W50. Will the 10W40 hurt it?
No.
I agree. I'm going to say no, and I'm not even an expert. And Mark Daniel says, lots of good information that is being given out for free. And I'm going to say no, because I'm not an expert. But listen to him.
Can I back up one?
Yes.
The guy with the
1040, 1050?
1040, 1050. He will probably notice lower oil pressure because of how the pressure sensors work. So the higher the viscosity oil, and I don't know what kind of temperatures he's experiencing, but that's pretty common to have a drop in oil pressure when you drop viscosities.
Yep. And then David Brown asks, is it because the motorcycle manufacturers don't want to rely on high oil pressure? So I think he was asking, is that why they have a specific type of oil that they want us to run?
No, the motorcycle manufacturers are building high performance engines, and if we go to something where we have to have a lot of oil pressure, it's gonna take a little bit of power.
Yeah, it takes power.
It's gonna take power, and then also typically when we go to higher oil pressure, we go to lower viscosity, and when we go to lower viscosity, if we get crumbs of dirt, debris in there, like from the clutch or the transmission, then the tolerances get tighter and we start getting into abrasive wear. So the motorcycle manufacturers are saying, look, let's keep the tolerances kind of wide. That lets the crumbs of the abrasive wear materials go through. We don't have to live on such high oil pressures. And I'm speaking right now. We're at dirt bike test, right?
Dirt bike test.
So we're talking primarily about dirt bikes. Now, if we were having this conversation on if this was super bike test and we had Formula One style engines that had really tight tolerances and big oil coolers and tons of oil pressure and lots of RPM all the time, my answer might be a little different.
Yeah, that's that makes perfect sense. So another question here, and this is it's from Tom Van Beveren. Remember Tom Van Beveren?
God, good old Tom.
From the old. He used to write the cycle news stories back when I was racing. Him and his wife.
And Tom is a wonderful guy. I got some stories about that man.
Yeah. So well, good. Maybe you're gonna have to break him out here in a second because I think he's gonna beat you up a little bit. Anyways, I started using Duralube in the early 70s, says Tom, and I always liked it. I never experienced a seizure with it, and it always seemed to burn very clean. Was I imagining the clean burn, or am I right?
He's right, and
especially if he was doing it at the recommended mixed levels.
Right, and what a little history going back. There was some lubricant technology that was coming forward that was pretty cutting edge for the day, and there were we started all using a high viscosity material that provided good hydrodynamic lubrication, and we found that when it actually was in the combustion process, there were 3 companies that kind of figured out that actually made a cooling gas and stabilized the combustion process, so detonation wasn't as prevalent. And so
which was definitely a problem on some of the bikes.
It's definitely a problem. And so if I can tip my visor to some people that definitely were pioneers, the 3 companies that did this are Bob Weeman, who was the principal at Intercontinental Lubricants. People in the East knew them as High Point, and in the West we knew it as Spectro, Golden Spectro.
That's what Dan Smith used to run, I think.
And Bob was a prince of a guy and a sharp son of a gun. He kind of came across some things to solve a problem, and then Bob Lancaster, Mr. Torco, the founder of Torco, he figured out he stumbled on this, kind of the same way, and said, man, if this does some things that I really like, from low smoke and low particulate, and Duralube, myself and a couple other guys started looking at some of these food grade pre-synthetics that did some things that we like. So, Tom Van Beveren is like, this oil, when it burns, it burns clean. Yeah, we were converting a high percentage of the oil from an oil actually to a combustible gas. And that's where
less smokeless. Remember, well, and PJ1 got on that kick. Yeah. They were the smokeless 2-stroke oil. Yeah,
Harvey from PJ, good guy, good brand, innovator. But the 3 of us, we got on the 32 to 50 to 1 ratio early on because we discovered
before
a few
it was
things.
Cool.
Yeah, before it was cool. We were so far.
You didn't like the smell of castor, is what you're saying.
I love the smell of castor. That was the hardest thing.
I for a while, and this is another one of my favorite brands that I ran was Rock Oil, and Rock Oil had strawberry scented 2-stroke oil. And they sent it out to us when I was at Dirt Rider magazine. They sent us a sample of this stuff, and it kind of said not for really racing use. It was more for scooters in cities and stuff. They didn't want it to smell bad, so they had this. I used to run that stuff all the time, especially trail riding, and my perfume smelled nice when you were riding behind me. Yeah. So there's always interesting stuff going on. Okay, so I got another question from Tom: is Duralube still available? I've been using 2-stroke oil I get at lawnmower shops called Champion Oil. By the way, Tom, you are a cheap sucker. Bottles look identical to old Duralube ones. It sure performs like the oil, and it's very easy to find and is cheap. See, I told you. Is it the same oil?
It's the same chemistry. A little history. Duralube, we evolved into multiple markets, motorcycle being the most visible, but we also got heavily involved in mopeds and ultralights and power equipment. And we found that
because you could make money there.
We made money there. The motorcycle stuff was good. It was high visibility. It was fun. It's fast paced, but the low emission 2-cycle oil for power equipment really stabilized us. And to answer Tom's question, the root chemistry that we brought forward with the second generation Duralube, when we sold the company, that went to a private packager, Champion Brands in Missouri, and they've kept that product going forward. And
same bottle.
Well, we owned the mold.
Yeah.
We came out with our own 12.8 ounce bottle, owned the mold, and that was one of the assets that went forward. So it's very, very, the root chemistry is very, very close. And for Tom, I know that he's a fellow vintage guy, and
can he run it in his vintage race bikes?
Because they're all Ariels and BSAs.
Oh,
and
he's got 4-stroke ones.
Well, he's also got some lovely little motorcycles that are 2-stroke, and what he's doing is just fine for him. And yes, the oil, and that's another one that we look at on.
Hey, Bob, if you eat all my tacos, I'm going to turn this camera around and point it at you. I mean, right now, because I'm getting really hungry sitting here. But keep going.
Yeah, but the oil, the lawn and garden oil for a low a low demand application is just fine.
And I can honestly say I've never run lawn and garden oil in any of my motorcycles. Just for the record.
Liar.
No, I'm serious. Unless that's what you're calling Duralube.
No, well, they were a little bit different, but the root chemistries.
I'm being mean. I'm going to apologize to you right now because I usually have Logan here. That's what he's supposed to do, is sit and write apologies. But like I said, I was stoked that you guys you guys coming on to that KTM factory team back in the day was probably the reason I was able to get a factory ride, if I really break it down. Whatever financial support that you kind of brought into that program and made that thing work.
It was big. It was really a huge commitment from a small company, and it was a true partnership. I mean, I have to say that working with Ted Lapidegas and Rod Bush and Don Rosine and all of the people there, we believed in each other. When times got tough, we all kept going forward, and
so I was always thankful, and I'll tell you how much I was, because CalGuard was a brown oil and you never saw it, and you could tell when somebody was running Duralube because you'd always have the little red on your white gas tank. You'd have that little red ring, because you'd spill a little bit and that oil would stain. So I always made sure that I had a little red oil around the top of the thing, and people would say, "You really run that stuff?" And I'd say, "Uh-huh." Not right now, maybe at the end of the race that I just run, but like actually in my practice bikes, I ran it most of the time because. So, anyways, I'm going to quit beating up you about that.
No, it's history's good because we learned a lot, in our histories, and I remember.
It's not a mistake; it's a lesson. I mean, it is a mistake, but if you take a lesson out of it and you learn something and things get better for it.
If we didn't learn something, we'd all be riding 72 Bull Tacos.
Yeah, thank goodness, right?
Right.
Jimmy, why don't you do vintage racing? Because I don't want to ride that. I like to look at it. Maybe one lap just to feel it. Hey, I got another question here. This Adam, a guy named Adam, commented on one of our YouTube videos about our KTM 350, where I talk about how the engine is audibly noisier than like the previous version. And this is the 2019 bike. And I have a 2016 also. Actually, I bought the test bike that he's watching the video on. That's how much I liked it. But he says the motor rattle you actually hear is the shitty stock cam chain tensioner. He says, get the Dirt Tricks tensioner and avoid the stock one breaking, like many have already happened. Well, so I'm going to go off on my little tirade about like, I really don't think that many KTM cam chain tensioners have broken. I've actually had on my 60 and I've had one get sticky, and at low oil pressure, like you're talking about, it wouldn't, because it uses oil pressure to expand. There's a small spring in there, but sometimes there's the some contaminants or whatever gets in that sliding sort of piston, and it doesn't open up. But so I had it. You had to rev it up, and all of a sudden the cam, the loose cam chain noise would go away. So I have had that thing. It's not that huge of a problem considering that bike had 340 hours on it before it went, and it's still going. But so the audible, the one I'm more curious about is like the audible noise that we experience. They're trying to get more horsepower out of the bike. So a lot of times they're looking to reduce friction, correct?
Yes.
And that reduced friction tends to increase a little bit of the noise.
Yes.
There's more rattle, and especially
there's more radiant. Fluids, the heavier fluids and different fluids do buffer some sound, and also things to aid in heat dissipation and reduce weight. Things get a little bit thinner.
Yeah. And can you get more horsepower with oil?
Absolutely.
Is it worth it? Like, what's there's no free horsepower, right?
There's nothing free.
So you're going at that point. You're going with like a lighter viscosity.
True.
And so maybe it's not. What's the disadvantages of doing that?
Okay. Well, I'll go back to, and I play with a variety of racing applications, and so if you have enough oil pressure, you can run a lighter oil.
Mm-hmm.
You keep with the oil, high pressure.
So you're relying on the pressure of the oil to fill up the orifice, as opposed to the molecular structure of the oil to hold the parts from galling. Yes. Essentially.
But the other side of it is there's some magic in oil. That's where the additives play a huge role. So you can actually have two oils that are exactly the same from a viscosity standpoint. They spec out the same, and you have one that has a lot better frictional properties than the other. And that's where that's where the A student and B student he starts earning his keep. And so there's some magic there, but when you start going that way, and that's in a race application, I'll tell you right now, there's between 2 and 5% horsepower change in oil. And if you don't think that that's worth having, when you start doing the restrictor plate, NASCAR, Daytona things, and you come up with 50 extra horsepower, that's money.
So potentially in motocross racing, let's talk about this. In a 250F, you probably should think about oil. On a 450, I don't think you need to. There's a lot left over when you're riding a 450. Yeah, and the 250F guys they're ringing it.
They're ringing it, and they're also maintaining high RPM, and that in itself keeps oil pressure and volume through the system going, and so the oil starts making a difference, and the oil makes a big difference on ring seal. And sometimes we start going the opposite direction. We start getting more horsepower when we start increasing viscosity. So it really.
You got to know your stuff.
You got to know your stuff, and you got to test, and then you've got to do a little bit of forensic analysis. And everybody wants to cheat and say, just what do I run? Well, what you do is
what are you running? It's because it does make a difference. I mean, just what this one guy runs may not be the same because your setup might be different. The way you ride may be different. Mm-hmm. I mean, I talk about this all the time. I like people to kind of at least test a little bit. Everybody just wants to take the pill. They want to take the pill and take it and everything be better. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the push-ups that would would actually do something where the pill would be a little bit easier. So we've kind of gone for about an hour here. So I'm going to let you know what we're going to do here. We are going to wrap up this particular segment. I'm going to shut down the Facebook Live here, and we are going to we'll start everything up again, and we're going to do a second segment, which if you're watching this one now in the future on the YouTubes or wherever it is, listening to as a podcast, Chris will be back on another episode, and we're going to talk about why emissions bikes are emissions bikes, and we're going to talk about regulations and changing gasoline and sound and all of those things that are just completely confusing to everybody that says, why don't they just make it like this? Why can't you ride your KTM SX or your Honda CRF R on the trails or down the street or whatever? So we're going to answer those questions. So,
Sure.
So if you're out there, we're going to shut down. I'm going to eat a taco. Chris is going to finish off a little bit of his tequila. By the way, we are drinking both Clase Azul and Loma Azul. Azuls must be good. Tonight, for those that were asking, and hopefully, actually, I'm going to see. We've got a couple questions. Does two-stroke oil have a shelf life?
No.
If it's synthetic oil, no. If it's bean oil, it will spoil if air hits it. Is that true?
It can. You can start getting some degradation. Spoiling is a good word for that. It can actually start generating some bacteria. So, some of the vegetable products don't have quite the purity of a refined or.
So basically, stuff can grow in it.
Oh yeah.
Can stuff grow in? Okay. Can stuff grow in the bowl of a carburetor?
Oh, it can not only grow, it can produce flowers.
So, we never really hit on ethanol either, did we?
Well, ethanol it is going to be a big topic for everybody.
A bigger topic,
and get used to it, and just learn to live with it.
And we're hoping guys like you are going to help solve it.
There are some countermeasures, and some are easy, and some are not so easy. But the industry will solve it one way or another, and I'll leave it at that. It might be chemical, it might be mechanical, or it might be global design.
Yeah, so. and this when we talk about the emissions compliant bike stuff, we'll dive in a little bit to the ethanol and just different gasoline issues. So. So we'll see you on the next one. So for Chris Real, Chris Real, and go ahead. Where can people find you if they need to get motorcycle oil questions?
Well,
things. You're not going to answer all their emails.
I'm not going to answer all your emails. I'm sorry. That's Jimmy's job. You got to ask him all those questions, and then he'll invite me up, and we'll have tacos again or tequila. I own DPS Technical or dpstechnical.com. You'll find a little bit of information there. We try to we don't have a brand.
It's definitely more of a business to business application.
Yeah, I don't have anything to really sell you. I'm not trying to sell you.
I'll tell you what he sells you, and he doesn't do this. He has helped me do sound testing. For Dirt Rider magazine, and was very proactive in a lot of the sound testing that helped us keep our riding areas open, which is super important. Motocross tracks open. Advised, if you knew what he did in the background, you would be thanking this guy. So especially if you're in the industry and you're listening to this and you need help in the oil business, in the sound testing business, in the motorcycle safety and certification side, he's definitely one of the main guys to go to.
Yeah, we test vehicles and
cars too.
Cars are a big part of our business. How
about those little scooter things? Those three-wheeled scooter thingamajiggers. Remember?
Oh yeah.
The ones that balanced or something like that.
Yeah, the technology is a funny thing. It's some of it you say, wow, a tricycle is supposed to have one wheel in the front and two in the back, and pretty soon we got backwards tricycles and
three-wheeling's a good feeling.
Yeah. No. My business, we're really focused on keeping motorcycles and riding areas open. I'm kind of the sound guy. Also help the manufacturers through some challenges with emissions and regulatory stuff. And I'm a motorcycle guy, and I really like riding motorcycles, and I try to keep the riding areas open. And I like running race teams and being involved. So
and he's way smarter than me, and he talked long enough so I could reach over and have a sip of beer and not have to look over my shoulder to see if the little kid next to me was going to talk. So Logan grew up. And by the way, everybody, good to see you in the room. We're going to sign off for a few minutes, and we will see you back in a few minutes. If not, and by the way, remember we have that call-in number. Gabe is sitting over there patiently in this tent we built out of plywood and foam board. He could be killed at any moment if it collapses, and he was hoping to take your calls, but he's probably pretty stoked that he didn't have to do it this time. So with that, for Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, for Chris Real, this is Jimmy Lewis, and hopefully we will see you out on the trail. Cheers.